It is an honor to present this award to Governor Chris Christie, the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan in American history. By any measure, Governor Christie is an exceptional leader. I offer 3 examples. First, Governor Christie is a superb communicator. He's gifted. Now, he entered office during uncertain times. It was the Great Recession. His clear, direct, and plain-spoken style was a breath of fresh air. Optimistic, reassuring, and sorely needed. Second, bipartisanship. Remember those days? Governor Christie and legislative leaders found common ground and compromise, all in an effort to help improve the lives of the people of this state. They didn't agree on everything, but they agreed on enough. Third, Superstorm Sandy was his defining moment, in my view. With a steady hand, Governor Christie and his team put government on a war footing, the likes that we haven't seen, and led the recovery from the worst natural disaster in state history. It is no surprise that he was reelected by a wide margin. He earned it. So join me in congratulating Chris Christie and in welcoming me here on the stage.
Thank you.
You want to step to the middle so we can get the NJBIA?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. Good to see a lot of friends, a lot of folks who used to work for me and make me look good. I appreciate you all coming. And I want to thank Michelle in particular for the work that she does here. It is not easy running a business organization in the state of New Jersey. It has been particularly less easy over the last 8 years. Yet Michelle has found a way to continue to keep people united, focused on the mission. And I appreciate, Michelle, what you did with me and also what you've been doing for the state in the years since then. I'm going to talk about a few things quickly and then leave the rest of the time for questions from all of you. I like doing that a lot more than I like sitting up here and giving you any kind of speech. But I think there are a few things at a forum like this that we have to talk about. The first is the really significant and challenging times we have in energy in this state. The increased demand, which is a good thing, that the state continues to grow, that we have an increased demand. Obviously, data centers even increases that demand geometrically. But what it's led to, as all of you understand acutely, both as business leaders and as residents of the state, is extraordinary increased costs. And that's unacceptable. And not only unacceptable, but unnecessary. Let me give you a few examples as to why and make sure I get this right. I've really kept quiet the last 8 years, as all of you may have noticed, about state issues. A couple of things to say on the national level, but been relatively quiet about state issues because I really felt like for the person who is your direct successor, they deserve the opportunity to do the job the way they want to do it, follow the mandate they feel they've gotten from the public. But now that we're near the end of that time, and Governor Murphy is reaching the conclusion of being the first two-term governor who's a Democrat in 48 years. It's kind of interesting for a blue state. I think we need to give him a report card on some of this stuff. So let's start off by saying the crisis I just talked about of decreased energy production in the state and as a result, really seriously spiraling costs are a creation of the Murphy administration. There's no other way to conclude it when you look at the fact that in 2016 and 2017, for the first time in state history in the last 2 years of our administration, we were energy self-sufficient in 2016. And in 2017, we were an energy exporter in New Jersey. We had developed, along with our partners in the utility business, an ability to not only sustain all the demands we had in New Jersey, but also to export energy beyond that. How did we get to the position now where we're importing near 40% of our electricity? It was the governor's hyper-focus, in my view, on climate change and his war on natural gas. Remember, we wouldn't have a good part of this problem if he had not invested in a 4-year legal battle to kill the Penn East pipeline, which our administration supported, and if Republicans had stayed in office in 2017, would have been built. Instead, now, what he's done is deterred any new baseload generation. And that begins the part of the problem. Now, there's a lot of discussion in the current election, and I'm, at least not in my remarks, I may have to in the questions, but I'm not going to get into the election. But what I will say is there's a lot of argument and discussion about PJM. Let me just say, yes, PJM is guilty of poor planning, but PJM is guilty of being a victim in some respects by premature plant closings that were absolutely demanded by the Biden administration. But Phil Murphy's actions, in my view, have been 75% of the cause of the problem. We're spending a lot of time in this governor's race talking about the 25% that, in my view, is PJM's problem. They shouldn't escape blameless, but let's put the blame where it belongs. You don't close multiple plants in this state as governor when you don't have any state-generated energy to replace it. I understand that the governor wanted to rely upon wind energy. I get that. And by the way, I signed the first wind energy bill when I was governor. I'm not opposed to wind energy, but only as a small part, and certainly not as part of baseload, that we need to turn the lights on every day. And so he closed those things in expectation that at some point he was going to get this wind energy project done. And let's be clear about why the wind energy project didn't happen. It didn't happen, in my view, for two reasons. One, it was never profitable. And the folks running those came to the conclusion that they weren't going to be profitable. But secondly, because the governor didn't fight for it. He didn't fight for it. And that's just a fact. He could have done more, he did not. And as a result, he let down the companies that had already invested billions of dollars in this project in New Jersey. So what's the difference between the Murphy administration and the Christie administration's approach to all this? It is significant, but I'm going to put my glasses on to make sure I don't miss any of them. First off, I said to my administration, to Lee Solomon, who was the president of the BPU, to Bob Martin, the head of the DEP, who I know you heard from earlier, that job one on the energy side is going to be to drive down costs of energy for business and residential customers. That's job one. And everything we do has to be driven towards that. Second, that we're going to promote a diverse portfolio of new in-state generation that follows the phrase all in on everything. Nuclear, wind, solar, gas-generated plants, all of them we have to be supportive of. So I talked about the Penn East pipeline. All of the above is the way you have to do this. And we also pulled out of RGGI, which has turned into a complete failure, and all of you can see how much RGGI has driven up your costs on your bills in the last 8 years when we got back into it. And I don't think it's done a lick of help for climate change. All it is another way for government to take more money out of your pocket. They don't call it a tax, but that's what RGGI is. It's another energy tax. You know, Governor Murphy came into office saying he was going to have 100% clean energy by 2035. Now, I'm pretty good at math. That's 10 years from now. We're going to be 100% clean energy. I mean, let's face it, everybody. People in this room know this, so let's say it out loud. That is asinine. It's never going to happen. It may make all the Al Gore people feel really good that he said it and he signed an executive order about it. That's really great. It's not going to happen. Renewable energy is not yet to the point where it could replace everything else in the state. And certainly not in the next 10 years. But what that does is it deters, discourages discussion of any other clean energy sources like much cleaner natural gas, which we have in abundance right over our western border in Pennsylvania. Killed the Penny's pipeline to stop it from coming in, killed the C. Warren plant that was being built in Woodbridge, and when we wanted to try to change what had previously been a coal and oil plant into a gas plant, killed the pipeline that was going to go to that as well. Well, when you do that, and you know that energy demand is not going to go down, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, I wasn't an economics major, but supply and demand is pretty easy to understand. The demand continues to go up, the supply continues to go down, the prices go up. And that's exactly what we've seen over and over again from this administration. And in my last 3 minutes here before questions, I just want to clear up a couple of things. I don't spend a whole lot of time reading the press in New Jersey, what's left of it. But there are a couple of things that they reported on that are just wrong that I'll take the opportunity to clear up for all of you. The first one is Oyster Creek. You now have some members of the state legislature on the Democratic side saying, oh yeah, it was Christie who closed Oyster Creek, and it caused all this problem. Let's be clear about the facts on this. Exelon closed Oyster Creek. Exelon came to the administration and said it was no longer economically viable for them to run the plant. So what did we do? With both Bob Martin and Lee Solomon, we negotiated a 10-year closure plan to give PJM and our administration and the next administration enough time to fill in for what would be lost by Oyster Creek closing, which, by the way, remember too, was the oldest operating nuclear plant in the country when it was closed. So I'm not arguing with Exelon's decision to close it because it had become inefficient and not profitable. But don't go out there and try to say now, oh no, it was Christie woke up one morning and decided he wanted to close Oyster Creek. No, Christie woke up one morning and Exelon came and said, we're closing Oyster Creek like next year. And I said, whoa, you're not doing that. Let's take time to make sure it gets done the right way. And the same was with the plant that I was alluding to before that we were trying to convert, the BL England plant, which was a coal and oil plant. We wanted to convert it to cleaner natural gas. And we were in the process of doing that. But what happened? Environmental groups all over the state filed lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit to delay and delay and delay our ability to convert that plant. They delayed it long enough for me to leave, and then Phil Murphy closed it. So, you know, I'm okay with taking blame for the things that I did wrong when I was in office, and there were definitely things I did wrong and that if I looked back, I would do differently. And anybody who's gone through 8 years as governor here and tells you there's nothing they wouldn't do differently is completely lying. But it's not those. It's not those issues. And on energy, we have caused ourselves self-inflicted damage. And the people of our state, as it usually happens when government makes really lousy decisions, are the ones paying the price. And the next governor, whoever it is going to have to bite the bullet and decide that we're going to take advantage of the natural gas that is so available to us in Pennsylvania and needs to build some new natural gas plants. Now, if they want to build nuclear, which we encouraged to be done during our administration, but PSE&G didn't want to do it, if they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for that as well. You want to further develop solar? During our administration, we grew solar to be the second largest in the country behind Arizona. So I'm not opposed to any of that. But understand that natural gas is what maintains the base load in the state and keeps everything running. The rest of it are add-ons that, as they mature in their development, can help to replace some natural gas plants ultimately, but not by 2035, everybody. Get real. And believe me, whatever the next governor does, one of the things they're not going to do is comply with that executive order. And the reason they won't is because they can't. And whether it's Governor Sherrill or Governor Chitterelli, their first step, in my view, if they asked, would be to sit down with the utilities and say, what do we need to do to get you to open 2 or 3 new natural gas generation plants as quickly as possible? But for all of you, understand, even if they do that, it's 3 to 5 years before they're open, given the permitting processes that go on and the supply chain challenges that are out there to get the turbines and all the rest that you need. The Middle East has brought up a lot of that. And so if you want to cut in line, you're going to probably have to pay a big premium to do it, and our ratepayers will pay for that too. So you've got a Hobson's choice. But it's a Hobson's choice that was created by this current administration. When Phil Murphy took his hand off the Bible, he inherited a state that was energy self-sufficient and had a plan to continue to meet growing demand with energy self-sufficiency in New Jersey. No matter who wins, you have to confront the new governor with their facts and remind them it's going to be a great thing. I did it. John Corzine did it. They can look in the camera and say, not my fault. Murphy's problem. Believe me, as you all know, Phil Murphy did more of that than I can count in the last 8 years. To blame stuff on me, it's a well-honored tradition to blame stuff on your predecessor. And the next governor should take advantage of that well-honored precedent and blame all the energy problems on Phil Murphy and do what needs to be done to get the job done the right way. You all have to be a loud voice for that. And don't worry about getting the governor angry. I mean, whether it's Mikey or Jack, none of them can get as angry as I used to get. So don't worry about it. My former chief of staff, Rich Bagger, is here, and I'll end with this. When Rich became my chief of staff, he told me it was really a great time to be chief of staff. He said, as he had watched it over the years from his seat in the legislature, that the relationship between the chief of staff and the governor had always been good cop, bad cop. And the chief of staff was the bad cop and allowed the governor to be the good cop. He said, this is the greatest administration ever. I get to be the good cop because you just love being the bad cop. So don't worry about that. It's too late to stand on niceties, everybody. There's things that need to get done here or these rates are going to continue to go through the roof. And they're going to affect businesses' ability to operate in the state and, just as importantly, people's ability to live in the state. So, Michelle, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. And we've got about 12 minutes or so, and I'll take questions on any topic you want, not just the one that we're here for today. We have people roving with microphones, from what I understand. So there's a question up here, and he's coming with a microphone right behind you.
Okay. Yes, Governor, in 2013, I spoke to you on Ask the Governor on New Jersey 101.5.
Those are the good old days.
Yep. So we were talking about how New Jersey is the invention state, and I was talking about, what's the state's plan on helping inventors do their thing. I just wanted to update you that I got a utility patent on my idea. I was speaking to you back in those days, and I wanted to give you my card, and I just wanted to update you.
What a good day for me.
Thank you.
Excellent. Congratulations. And look, so that I don't say, nothing but negative things about Governor Murphy, I do think that one of the areas that he's built on our record on is trying to use incentives to attract lots of different industries here to the state. And I think he's done a pretty good job at that. I think if taxes were lower, he could have done an even better job at that. But you'll remember that at the beginning of his administration, tax incentives that we had passed were alleged by his now Attorney General to have been criminal. the very same tax incentives that he's now used for 8 years to attract Netflix and other companies to the state. So two good things are going to happen in January of 2026. The first one is that there'll be a new start for the state, and I think that's always a good thing. To have a new governor who's going to bring a new team and new perspective and new point of view to the job, and I think that always is something that we should be hopeful about, and it's filled with possibility. And the second thing is Matt Plotkin will be out of state government, because I don't think there's been a person more deceitful and more destructive to state government in my lifetime here than the current Attorney General. He is a disgrace to law enforcement. As someone who did it for 7 years myself, I'm embarrassed. And the governor should be embarrassed for having put him there.
We have one here, Governor.
Okay.
Over here, this side. Over here, Governor.
Oh, over here.
So in your opinion, the wind energy is still a viable option? And the second part of the question is the RGGI tax, is it being used wisely and or is it going to the right places?
Of course the RGGI tax is not being used wisely. It's a ridiculous question. And on wind energy, yeah, I think wind energy is viable. I signed a bill to try to get wind energy done in the state. I don't think it's viable over the next 3 years, given the position the Trump administration has taken. Unless they change their approach, they've killed just about every wind project on the East Coast, a couple that they're letting go. But I think that's more of a federal problem than it is a state problem at the moment. I think the Murphy administration didn't do everything they could to help the companies who were trying to build it when you had a favorable administration, the Biden administration, towards wind energy there. But now I think the bigger problem is not whoever the new governor is going to be. They'll look like a small problem compared to the Trump administration and the approach they've taken in wind energy so far. Okay, over here.
Hi, Governor. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question.
Sure.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, Michelle and team, for organizing this. This is really an innovative forum, and I'm glad to be here. Jalpa Purani with CGI. My question is not only to you, but maybe to everybody who's thinking about policies in this room. What are some perspectives you have on using AI to think about transmission and storage? We talk about electric grid. We talk about maintaining some kind of a steady flow to those areas that may not be able to generate or receive, the electricity on time. How can we use AI, or maybe just thoughts you have on using latest technology to help transmit electricity, right? Because of just the overusage that we have, not just cell phones, but electric vehicles, right? So how can we utilize latest technology to enhance that?
Good question. First of all, let me admit right up front that I am not an AI expert. So the idea that I could come up here and give to you like, oh, well, let's use AI in these 4 different ways to help it, I'm clueless about that. But if I were governor, what I would do is find people who did have a clue. And that was one of the best parts of the job, was there was plenty that I didn't know and a lot that I didn't understand. But when you're the governor of New Jersey and you pick up the phone and call experts, they're willing to come and teach you. So I think one of the things the next governor needs to do is say, I would set up by executive order an AI task force that would look at every department in state government and how can we use AI in every department in state government to help deliver the services we're delivering to the public in a more efficient and effective way. And get people on that task force, especially right in the beginning of your administration when you are most popular, dragoon them into doing this work for free for you, and get them to make you smart on that issue. You brought up electric vehicles, which I think is just such an interesting thing. The people who advocate for electric vehicles are the same people who don't want to have reliable baseload electricity. It's great. I don't know that they understand, where does the electricity come from? Is it some magic? That electricity comes from magic, so that when you use an electric car, you're being more friendly to the environment. Okay, I'll give you that. Except to power the electric car, you need to have electricity, and that electricity has to be generated in the main by natural gas. But they oppose that. So I don't know. Maybe they want us to, all, stand outside and pray for more sun in New Jersey so they can run their electric car. I don't think that would work. And so, part of this is about getting realistic about what we can do. Can we make transmission better? Yes, I suspect we can. Can we make generation more efficient and therefore more environmentally friendly? I think the answer to that is probably yes, too. And I think AI will contribute to all of that. But we also need to be realistic about, I love my good friend Gavin Newsom out in California, who wants no gas-powered cars to be sold in his state anymore in the next 10 years. But then last summer, put out an executive order telling people not to charge their electric cars because it would cause brownouts. So you know what an electric car that's not charged is? A planter. Right, so I don't know, you can't be for both, right? So I think we need to not only use AI, but let's use human intelligence to tell people the truth and be realistic about it and not tell them we're going to be 100% clean energy and electric cars by 2035, which is not going to happen. We
Back
do
here.
one more.
Back here, Governor Christie.
Okay.
Back here.
Good afternoon, Governor. I enjoyed your talk, and I always enjoyed hearing you on the fan radio talking about sports with Craig Carton.
Yeah.
But I'm Chris Whitehead. My background is air quality work, and I've been a consultant in this state now for about 20 years. And the last 5 or so, actually involving a lot of the environmental justice law in New Jersey. And air quality in the state has come down drastically over the last 30 years, improvements across the board, and that's obviously a great thing. But in hot pockets of the state, there are elevated ambient emission levels of various contaminants. But if you look at it, the compliance histories of those permitted sites in the state are often pretty good, 90 to 95%. So if all of that's true, doesn't that actually also indicate that there's a policy problem here and we're citing too many places on top of each other? I guess as a follow-up to that, did the EJ law in the state try to actually combat that the right way?
So I think your question is asking me, are we too densely populated and developed in the state? And is that part of the cause of the problem? Is that right?
I'm basically putting out there that I think that is part of the problem, but is Jersey currently trying to entangle that the right way?
It doesn't sound like it. As I listen to the current debate in the gubernatorial race, they're competing with each other about who's going to, develop affordable housing. Well, in a state that already has 9.5 million people and is already the most densely populated state in the country, it doesn't sound like either one of them. Jack's a little better on this in my view than Mikey is, but they're all talking about how they're going to develop affordable housing. They just argue about who should be the driver of that, the private sector or the public sector. And so I don't think any of them are going to address the issue you're talking about, no. And, my view during my 8 years was not anti-development. We tried to be as positive as we could, but we wanted it to be smart and take into consideration where the state is already in terms of the denseness of our population. And that, I think, led to some good development during those 8 years, but not overdevelopment. And I fear, for purely political reasons, both candidates are advocating for something, and this is happening in New York City also, with the socialist mayoral candidate, who's apparently going to build, 50, 60, 100,000 new units of housing in New York City. How, we're not exactly sure yet, but I'm sure we're going to find out over the next 4 years with great delight. I think that people need to be realistic about it. As you know, when I was governor, I signed an executive order to get rid of COA. The Supreme Court overturned it. Did everything I could to try to stop having the government tell municipalities how many units of any type of housing that they have to have. But I think that's coming back into vogue. And I think people need to be concerned about it in places all over the state. My view, development should be driven by the private sector, where there are opportunities to develop responsibly, where they can make their case to the local municipality. The DEP in the Christie administration was not an impediment to development. It's not our job to make your life completely easy. We have a job to protect the environment in the state, but it's not like it is now, where you might as well just not even ask. So there's got to be a way to do this in the right way, and I think it's the private sector, where you all decide you want to develop, or you have the land where you can do it, and you can convince the municipality that the upside is greater than the downside. I don't think state government should get in the way of that. But we also shouldn't be having the state government tell, we're sitting here today in Somerset County, they shouldn't be telling Franklin Township how many units they're supposed to have. They shouldn't, be telling Morris Township how many they should have. They shouldn't be telling any of these towns, in my view, how much they should have. What the hell do they know? I mean, I thought all the time, well, what the hell does the Supreme Court know about how many units are supposed to be where? But what Jack is going to find out if he wins, I heard him talking the other day about the people he was going to put on the Supreme Court if he wins. God bless, I hope so. But if you all remember my 8 years, I nominated at least 7 different people for the Supreme Court, most of which never even got a hearing before the Democratic Senate. And I appreciate Andrew talking about how great our bipartisanship was, and it was. We got a lot of stuff done, but we didn't get the court done. And here's why. Because Democrats understand that is their firewall in this state. We can win elections as Republicans, but the firewall from us making really significant systemic change that will last is the Supreme Court. And I got some good people on there. I think Ann Patterson's very good. I think Fuzzy was good. I think, isn't that great that we had a justice named Fuzzy? I just think that's one of my great achievements. And I think Lee Solomon was a good justice. But frankly, they were not, none of them could be game changers. And, part of what you're discussing is been created not by the politicians directly, but by the Supreme Court directly. And the Democratic Party needs to take responsibility for the fact that they put people on the Supreme Court. And they put, during the Murphy years, they put some fake Republicans on there too. I think you know who I'm talking about. Who will not do anything to push back philosophically on any of that. So if Jack does win, I wish him the best of luck. Maybe Nick Scutari will be more welcoming to some real conservatives on the Supreme Court than Steve Sweeney was. Those of you who dealt with Senator Scutari can make your own judgment on that. I certainly have my opinion, but we'll leave that to the side for the moment. I want to end by going back to what I said at the beginning to all of you. You have to continue to be a voice, and even a stronger one. When administrations change, they're looking to make friends early. When they start to get settled in, they have figured out who their friends are, and it's harder to make new friends then. You need to try to make friends with whoever this new governor is early to try to get your agenda to the front of the list. And your agenda will always be challenged if we continue to have a Democratic legislature, but there are some pro-business Democrats, and we wound up cajoling a number of them to vote with Republicans to get some things done, like eliminating the estate tax that no one ever thought would happen in this state. And I say it must be a pretty good policy because damn, almost every one of my other policies, Phil Murphy's reversed, but the estate tax is still eliminated, so there must be something good about it. Those are the kind of things we need you out there talking about and setting an agenda that the next governor is going to have to answer to. And I'm now leaving, and today probably is really the inaugural of my leaving, being quiet about what's happening inside New Jersey. I gave my predecessor his 8 years. That was my goal. I've done it. Whether it's Mikey or Jack, they're technically a successor of mine, but not directly. So now, once we skip one, I get to say whatever the hell I want. So buckle in, everybody. We're going to have some interesting conversations over the next year or so, and I'm going to start once again speaking, as Andrew mentioned, loudly, directly, and holding people to account for what they said in this campaign and what they ultimately wind up trying to do as governor. And hopefully we'll be able to do some of that together. So thanks for having me today. Thank you for the award. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work.